Good day everyone, I'm 𝘍𝘠𝘳𝘯𝘊 and I'll be presenting this work on tiny CNN architecture for medical face mask detection for resource-constrained endpoints. This work was done by Puranjay Mohan, me and Abhay Chirania. So without further ado, let's move on to the work we have done. First of all, we'll talk a little bit about the problem statement. So right now, as all of us are aware, the world is going through one of the most dangerous pandemics of COVID-19. And according to WHO, one of the most effective ways of spotting the transmission of coronavirus is to wear medical face masks. Monitoring of face masks and when and where people are using them is a challenge because manual monitoring could be sometimes unsafe or impractical. We propose a novel architecture which can be used on for edge devices for this purpose. I'm sure all of you are already aware that many solutions already exist in the market which claim to do the same thing, but those require expensive cameras or onboard single board computers which might not be affordable for everyone. We in our solution have proposed a tiny ML-based approach which incorporates a model of just 130 KB on an ARM Cortex-M7 microprocessor. The inference speed is 30 frames per second, which is really fast. We'll also go through some prior work in this section. The first paper here by 𝘍𝙗𝘳𝘯𝘵, S. Bajgar, and A. Damani, they used a multi-stage CNN architecture which is highly accurate, but it was not possible to deploy on our edge case scenario because of its large model size, computational complexity, etc. Similarly, there are paper by Chaudhary-Pan et al. They use transfer learning. There are actually many transfer learning based approaches which have been used. Again, it is very accurate but could not be used because of its large model size, computational complexity, etc. Manogaran's paper was a bit more interesting. They used the Resonance 50 as a feature extractor. This was followed by an SVM and a decision tree for classification. It had a very high precision and recall, but it was not suitable for edge deployment because of its big module size and also the biggest size of images. The first paper here on the slide, they use a YOLO model with Resonance 50. It had better accuracy and multiple faces in a single image could be judged, which is really useful and practical. They did, however, have a large model size and computational complexity, which made it slightly less practical. Balakrishnan and Meanpal's paper used a VGG16 architecture, whereas Roy and Nandi's paper used a YOLO version 3 architecture. I won't talk about all of these papers individually, but in particular, B. Roy and S. Nandi's paper, the size was much smaller, but it was still not small enough to fit into our microcontroller, and the accuracy was not very good. So this motivated us to get into this problem and try to solve it from a very affordable and practical point of view. We developed a deep learning based system for face mask detection in live video streams to be used for real-time monitoring. Previous solutions using transfer learning are novel but computationally heavy and hence impractical in many real-world scenarios. The solution has to be small enough to be deployable on the smallest available microcontrollers and the cheapest ones. It could be used in public places for automatic door opening, uh, in banks, in public restrooms, in many places. To build an easy and safe solution for real-time monitoring of face mask usage in the public. This was our goal for this research work. So let us talk a bit about the proposed methodology. We deployed it on a 32-bit ARM Cortex M7 based microcontroller STM32H734VI. 1 MB of SRAM this setup had, and 2 megabytes of flash memory. It had a frame buffer RAM of 496 KB, which is used to load images from the camera, the model which we have trained, associated scratch buffer, and everything else. The documentation actually suggested that we could keep the model under 400 KB, but the largest CF-Lite model which we could actually load was of 220 KB. But in this research paper, our model is of just 138 KBs. Dataset construction, we use three datasets: the face mask 12K images dataset, the face mask classification dataset, and the OpenMV dataset. The OpenMV dataset was made by us. You can see the original sizes and the augmented sizes of the datasets. We obviously only use the augmented datasets without without the original ones. The original ones were made to undergo certain types of augmentation, which included, but was not limited to, interpolation augmentation, which has actually been discussed in one of our prior papers. We found that it was useful in this paper as well. Proposed architecture continues. Convolutional neural networks were designed in TensorFlow 2.3. It had about 128,000 parameters. Categorical cross entropy was chosen as the loss function. Chosen optimizer was Adam optimizer. Callbacks used a reduced LR on plateau and model checkpoint. Each weight was quantized to int8 and was thus 1 byte. And the complete model size of the quantized model along with the weights together was 130K. Electron visualizations of the two models are on screen right now. On your left, you can see the float32 model, and on your right, you can see the int8 quantized model. You might notice that the dropouts have been reduced in int8 quantized model. That's because certain layers in TensorFlow like dropout, uh, etc., they are not activated when they are in inference mode, because every single neuron in every single layer will be used, the weights of those layers would be used when it's being used for inference. You also might notice that we have used a dropout very aggressively, like almost every layer has a dropout after that. This was this was found to be actually working better than having dropout usually like we have it in the last 3-4 layers, etc. So now we will see the results of our work. The confusion matrix for the proposed model. On screen, we can see that the true positive for the flow32 model was 2396. It actually slightly increased to 2389 when it was actually moving on to quantized to int8. Similarly, 2355 was after quantization 2397, again a slight increase. But the actual big squeezer model, it was initially 2390, then it fell to 2327. Initially it was 2138, then it increased to 2397. And for the modified squeezer, where we actually made the squeezer by removing some of those modules and having only 4 of the 6 modules. So there we, out of like 2397, it became 2349, and from about 2288, it became 2397, which is a slight increase. So we see that our model here, the first model, which is on screen right now, did perform reasonably well, despite being very, very small in size and much smaller than SqueezeNet. You can also see the accuracy and loss curves for the proposed model for SqueezeNet and modified SqueezeNet on screen. Finally, we can have some predictions from our proposed model as well. On this screen, we can see that all the predictions are correct. You can see that the faces which do not have masks are classified as 0, and the ones which have masks are classified as 1, which is good. Next, we have some performance metrics. So we have the model comparison against SqueezeNet, and we also have the compression comparison. The original SqueezeNet model was 8 MB. Modified SqueezeNet, where we removed some of those modules, it was 3.8 MB, and our model was 1.5 MB. This was without any quantization. But after quantization, the original SqueezeNet was 780 KB, the modified one was 386 KB, while our one was just 138 KB. So the int8 accuracies, again, you can see that our model had the highest accuracy amongst all 3 compared models. You might be wondering why we did not compare ResNet on this list, because it did not make sense, because ResNet's huge sizes, over 50 MBs, even the smallest ResNets were over 50 MBs, and there was no way we could deploy or even think of deploying them on edge devices like ARM Cortex microcontrollers, which allow only 220 KB of models to be loaded. Coming down to the compression comparison, we notice here that the models which are the smallest are actually getting the reduction in size percentage is actually the greatest. So the SqueezeNet model, which is 8 MB in size, it had a size reduction percentage of 98.5, whereas when 3.8 MB model was taken, it had a size reduction percentage of 98.9, whereas for our model it was 99.8, which is almost 99%. We'll now discuss the strengths of the proposed algorithm, which is Extremely efficient, real-time, well-generalizable, and economically viable CNN-based solution for medical face mask detection. It was implemented on an ARM Cortex M7-powered OpenMV H7 board. It had a 99.83% accuracy on model on 138 kb with speed of 30 frames per second on a development board, and the model performs better if inputs and outputs are in intake. Primary findings of our research: aggressive regularization through dropout might be useful for developing generalizable CNN architectures useful for binary classification. On resource-constrained devices, that is very small edge devices, smaller models sometimes outperform the bigger ones and in terms of generalization accuracy as well. On smaller models, Int8 appears to generalize better than Float32 models. Interpolation augmentation seems to improve this classification generalization for resource-constrained endpoints. And finally, on devices which have floating point support, keeping the inputs and outputs on Float32 gives the best results. Thank you all. It was lovely talking to all of you, and I'm excited to see you all at the conference and answer all your questions in real time as well. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Happy holidays.